can't believe what we just saw. Winning the bid by 1 second, and this just shows how well the two players know each other. We've got liftoff.
I'm a bit shocked. I'm a bit gobsmacked. Having less than 9 minutes against Hikaru Nakamura, having a 6-minute deficit, and the black pieces, it's not going to be easy. It is Magnus, of course, but I think we'll see some serious flagging if Hikaru can't win on the position, which is quite likely, quite possible.
Hikaru has to win on demand. He's got the white pieces. He's up on the clock by a big margin. Magnus Carlsen needs just to draw. And the moment you say that sentence, it's hard to believe. It's hard to believe that you can fight this.
A dirty flagger. He wants to win on the clock, not on the board. I mean, you look at the position. Black has everything under control. What Hikaru is relying on is lead on the clock. He just wants to keep the position as ambiguous as possible.
Yep, no trades, no exchanges, no clarification of the position. He's just trying to force Magnus to go into the tank at some point, which is guaranteed to happen, and only later maybe put him under pressure on the board or make him kind of force him into those difficult decisions with the white pieces.
And it wasn't just that. It was also Hikaru Nakamura flagging the bots on ICC because he would close the position and make a million moves, then a pawn move and things like that to beat the bots on the Internet Chess Club. So here in this game, he's not a bot. He's only human, but he plays like a bot most of the time. Magnus Carlsen, only 8 minutes on the clock. No pieces have been traded.
Yeah. No pawns have been traded as well. So super closed position here. When you're in the Armageddon, when you're up on the clock, you've got to play the clock as much as the position. And look at Hikaru. This is when he's going to make Magnus think, harry the H-pawn, goes up the board. G4 coming in next.
Can also activate, there we go, on a nicer diagonal now for Hikaru. He knows these ideas inside out. He's been playing these ideas since he was a kid. Yes, with reverse colours. Normally he's on the black side, but it's the exact same pawn structure. Is increasing, if anything, in Hikaru's favour. This is really worrying times for Magnus, I've got to say.
If we get king and rook versus king and rook, which is an obvious draw, Hikaru Nakamura will try to flag him. So Magnus, he needs to keep his eye on the clock. He needs to play quickly every single turn.
And David, you've been talking about that white bishop on h3. One plan that black has to follow up with the trades would be to move the queen ahead and then to defend that bishop coming to e6. But look at this. The position has blown open. Hikaru says, now is the time I strike in the center, f4. That is one committal decision by Hikaru.
Finally, there is a trade. Finally, black's job here, or at least the next few moves, have become clearer. They have become more obvious. And yes, the evaluation bar shoots up on white side, but he needs to back it up on the board now, Hikaru. He can't just rely on the clock and realign his rooks. But it's not the king that uses the corner, it's the knight. What a flexible move.
If we can bring up an analysis board, I think there was a pretty critical moment here for Hikaru. He decides to step backwards, but I think he could have sacrificed the pawn, going e5, and after pawn takes pawn, f5. This is a thematic pawn sacrifice. You throw your knight to e4, you control all of the squares in the position, and you have an attack. I don't know if it would have worked out. It does involve sacrificing some material, but Hikaru instead drops his knight back top forward.
Of a longer game.
It just feels like it's easier to play with white. The moves that you're suggesting are appearing on the board. David, he takes the queen out, expecting the bishop to come out, the rook to come out to a better square. And at some point, Hikaru will strike down the board with h5 because you really don't want to trade the bishop for the knight. He just first sidesteps with that king to h1, really hinting at that move h5 right now, which will make Magnus go into a bit of a think because he needs to be prepared to respond with that. Magnus immediately plays the move bishop e6. We've been talking about the importance of trade in this position. He is afraid of the attack a little bit. The best way to respond to this is to trade off your opponent's pieces.
Playing this this f5 break will become very relevant. Black can open it on his own terms, but let's go back. Tanya, you predicted the future this time, and this is the current position. f5 on the board, trying to open up lines for black's pieces.
David, I love black's position. We've been talking about how ideally the rooks are placed, and take a look at this. Now, after f5, I don't see a way in which white can actually open the center. That looks like it would be great for black if Hikaru decides to trade. You take it with the pawn, the g file is open, the queen can swing from c7 to g7 at the right time. You can double up on the e file. It looks like white might have to make the decision to push that e-pawn. And he does it. It's e5, the bishop on e7, and now this h4 weakness suddenly appears out of nowhere.
Yeah, he's at least hinting that he might trade off these set of pawns now and maybe shift the white rook across towards that black king. Still enough pieces left to create an attack for Hikaru Nakamura, but he needs to do it quickly now. He needs to rely on his instinct. Stop being in your own head. Stop calculating. You just got to go for it.
Then Hikaru could play for her. That is why Magnus took this pawn on h5. That is a huge decision by him because it opens up his own king. But look at the white king in the corner. Now that's exposed. There's a rook on e6 ready to slide over to the h6 square. If that knight captures on h5, you may lose that piece if it gets pinned. So black can start taking control of the g and h files. And that's why Hikaru says, no. You can keep that pawn there. It's sort of an umbrella for my king. I'm bringing the rook to the g file first. I want to play rook g2, rook a1 to g1, maybe bring a rook to h2 as well. Bring all the pieces to the party before you start taking a pawn that is double and isolated.
A question to Magnus. How do you consolidate? How do you set up a defensive wall? The black king, white's rooks are coming for it. And, OK, he chooses to slide his rook across.
All of them are weak. Currently, black was a pawn up. I was going to say is, but Hikaru snaps up that h5 pawn, and that's a big blunder.
Yes, because there's a tactic. I mean, I would not have seen it without the evaluation, but knight takes pawn on e5. That is a game changer, because once the pawn takes the knight on the square, the queen slides up one with check, and then the rook slides from g6 to h6. No matter what white does, he's going to lose his queen. So if Magnus Carlsen spots knight takes e5, it turns the tides in his favor. And I think he's looking at it, the way he's looking at this position, and he's kind of in a little bit of disbelief. Knight takes e5 is a huge oversight by Hikaru Nakamura.
Oh, he doesn't find it. He moves his knight away. Same threat, but it would have been more effective to capture a pawn in the process. You would have been winning on the spot. Another missed opportunity. Not the first time we've said that today by Magnus Carlsen. He brings his knight the other way, so this threat is still on the cards. Queen check, followed by the rook shifting. Hikaru still needs to defend tenaciously to avoid that one. But Magnus missing shots again. Maybe he's realised he dodged a bullet there. But
isn't black's f5 pawn hanging? Random question.
It is. White knight can go and take that pawn. OK, he doesn't. Hikaru Nakamura stepping back. That move shows that he really is nervous. He does allow black to grab a pawn now. Magnus a pawn up.
It's a little bit deep, but I think he didn't take the pawn at 5. There might have been a draw by repetition had he done that. I don't know if we have time to show it, but that's probably why he took a step back. He knows objectively maybe it's not the right choice, but he needs to win this game.
And often in Armageddon chess, let's show that, Robert, just while we were there. Knight takes pawn. You can bully your opponent with the thought of a repetition. How do we get there? We give a check, I guess.
And then sacrifice the rook on f5, and then go rook h6 check, and that's king on h2 is in harm's way. It can only go up to g3 in the position, and ideas with bishop h4 check or rook g6. Maybe, I guess, that was the wrong one. But the problem is this white king is in huge danger.
Magnus missing knight e5, and now I'm just wondering if this was part of the bigger plan, that he knew that knight f5, he had calculated his way through, knowing that it ends in a repetition. He ends up with an extra pawn, and wow, we've got a lot of trades that have happened. That cannot be good news for Hikaru.
Can't be good news. The queens are off the board as well. Things are disappearing. There is a 1 minute difference in it right now, but Magnus should be able to hoover off all the pieces.
Did see him react, though, maybe realizing he has missed an opportunity in this game, but he only needs a draw, Magnus, to win the match.
He's now 2 pawns up, but he has let the white rook in. That white rook is active now on the 7th rank. He's going to start gobbling up some pawns. Magnus, has he lost control? Suddenly Hikaru, he's hustling. He's just trying to pose difficult questions to his opponent. If you can't go and take that black A-pawn, maybe push the white A-pawn. Just hint that you're going to promote it later. OK, we see a trade of knights getting rid of the very strong black knight. But every piece that disappears from the board, every trade, guides Magnus closer to that draw. He's still 2 pawns up, remember. And the evaluation bar still in the middle. Can Magnus guide this one to safety? Still big questions to be answered. OK, he does put his pawn on a safe square, but it's not going to be safe for too long. White's rook will go after it eventually. There we go. And what do you guys think? Predictions now?
Under pressure and expectation, everyone chokes. But these guys are really bringing their A game. Hikaru making decisions that keeps the game going. And that's the key to this Armageddon. Look at him just pursuing that pawn. Magnus moves it 1 more step ahead, and now the bishop comes back to attack it. And I think he's creating his chances. If that A passer is on the board, it's game on.
Like, Magnus has to be nervous given the circumstances.
Guys, we've got to mention, the whole day Magnus's air quality has been great, but as the pressure has increased, his air quality has got worse and worse and worse, and that might be affecting his play. And look at that, suddenly no green circles there for him. If he goes down to defeat, maybe that would have been one of the reasons. Meanwhile, a set of rooks have been traded, and black's pawns are all weak. They're ripe for the picking. Magnus, he's just playing too slowly right now. If he had better air quality, maybe he would be a bit faster, and every second counts at this level. The margins are so small.
But I think that black has an idea of his own. Magnus will slide his rook 1 square over to d8, use the king to protect the bishop, and then bring his rook d8 to d4 and go after the c-pawn. We did see Magnus just bring his rook to d8 after Hikaru stole a pawn. So Magnus's plan is now clear. Will he have enough time to execute it? That's the essential question. But with 2+ minutes on his clock, I do think it's looking like a task that he is capable of handling.
Yeah, 2 minutes. So on the board, he's fine. But is the clock going to tell the decisive factor here? I think you can jump in. There we go. The black rook has landed. Not just is this pawn up for grabs, the pawn behind it. And white has to bank everything on this passed pawn. You have to run it through somehow. You have to break the blockade, somehow evict this black bishop, kick it away, and somehow cause some problems for the black king. But on the board, it definitely looks like Magnus is in full control. And here we go. The position progressing. White's bishop is actually the one being kicked around. Black has 2 connected passed pawns. Hikaru doesn't look happy at all.
And the clock is about even. So Hikaru doesn't even have his lead on the clock. He's down material. That is terrible news for someone who needs to win this game.
Yeah, he needs to win it, but actually he should be the one defending. Look at the evaluation bar dropping down in black's favour. Those are 2 runners, those 2 black pawns. They're going to cost white some material.
And there's no stopping them. And we see Hikaru there. He is worried about his position, but he's still, wow, what just happened?
Things are turning again. This will happen a lot throughout this time scramble, but the black pawns are running. They look quicker. 2 normally run slower than 1, but those 2 connected passed pawns are so close to becoming queens.
Well, white can give a check and move his own pawn 1 square closer to the queening point at a8, but black's rook just saves it. And you've got these 2 pawns which are unstoppable. How do you fight these 2 central pawns?
Hikaru looks devastated. Hikaru looks like he's actually ready to resign almost. All you need to do is Magnus step some pawns forward. If you don't get flagged, you're guaranteed to win this Armageddon.
And now we have kind of a blitz game where it's about even on the clock and Magnus only needs a draw. And we saw the bar go about level, but I think the reason that it wasn't actually equal is because a draw is bad for Hikaru. It might have been a forced draw, and he can't have any part of that.
Yeah, Hikaru is simply a pawn down now. Neither of those pawns became queens, but it did come at the cost of more trades, more exchanges. And look at this classy move from Magnus. He's just trying to swap things off. He's now managed to get rid of the bishops, rid of a set of pawns. And Hikaru, is he going to try and flag Magnus? The answer is no, it's a draw. Magnus takes this Armageddon and the match.
And believe it or not, Hikaru is actually the one who offered the draw. That's the ultimate sign of respect. He wasn't going to try to flag somebody he was 10 seconds behind on the clock against. That is a good show of sportsmanship.
Wow.
We see a big smile on Magnus Carlsen's face and Hikaru shaking his head. The big match is over. Magnus Carlsen wins the winner finals.